I'm gonna go pull an ear of corn. I figured I would walk and talk and chew gum at the same time while I'm doing this. I got some questions about this corn, and it doesn't seem to matter when it was planted. Doesn't matter what variety it was. It doesn't matter what company produced this seed, and it's not just me. I changed my program, which I've talked about extensively on here, on how I determined what I needed for my crop. I didn't do the old-fashioned, 650 pounds of 12-24-24 with boron, zinc, and sulfur. Okay, back in the field. I pulled an ear. I pulled an ear that looked about like all the other ears that were in that area of the field. I'm not going to peel it back because I just don't want to. Now I get over here, and these ears, I'm not going to pull that one because there's a gap there. Let's just reach and grab. I had some green snap from that windstorm we had. This looked like a good ear. That's about a representative of everything else that's here. Let me turn this thing around so you can see me get whacked in the face. There's small ears, there's large ears, there's just ears. It's been a tough summer. So the first ear that I pulled, which is this one. The second ear that I just pulled is this one. The first ear was the first corn that we planted with the 7,000 corn planter. The second one was this field, which was the first field I planted with the 7,200 24 row planter. Now, I'm going to say that this corn never saw, oh my God, that's from green snap. If you don't know what that is, it's high levels of wind and a pain in the ass. Anyway, this farm has not seen drought. There was never a spot, never a time this summer that this particular field curled up so tight. You saw on the knolls that there was a little bit of curling, but for the most part, it did not show widespread drought stress at all. Shit, come on, thing. It just wasn't there. So this is what baffles me, and I'll shut this off and go over to my tailgate, and I'll peel this thing back, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Pollination, we had rain for pollination. It all pollinated, and I can prove that. But there's something wrong, and it's not just me. I believe it's the whole country, because I saw Cold Cornstarch do this. I saw Farmer MD with this same thing. I saw Eastern Shore Farmer with this. When I was in North Carolina in June, their corn was about this stage then. Was that June? That was, yeah, the end of June, July. Yeah, it was July. It wasn't June, it was July. Their corn had the same thing as what we've got. It's like this nationwide problem. So, what is it? What is it? And let me set this up and I'll talk about it there. Okay, so I've put my transmitter on for my microphone right close to my mouth so you don't hear wind noise. This is what I'm talking about. This dieback in the tip, or tip back, as we call it dieback. This is tip back if you're in the Midwest, from what I understand. I've always called it dieback or tip dieback. This is an ear that I took from the field right here by the farm. This one here is also an ear where the organic fertilizer pile and the lime, just south of the lime pile, same thing. So at first glance, you'll think that it is a pollination issue, like, oh, it didn't pollinate to the tip. Well, a pollination issue could be this right here. What you want is nice straight rows like that, and from the butt to the top like that. But You get over here and there's this mishmash thing, which is on the bottom side, so maybe the pollen wasn't quite good enough, you know, pollination wasn't quite good enough. But this did pollinate to the tip, because you can see the yellowing in the center. It just started, and it started to grow the kernel and then stopped. Now, it was getting pretty dry there for a while. So each one of these ears, this is from the field that I just came out of. This is pretty representative of that field, I would say. So the tip back on this is not quite as bad as the others, but the ear length and girth is not very good. We're going to count the rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. This is a 14. This one looks like a 16. This is a 14. This one here, 1, 2, 3, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. This is a 16. So I got two 14s and two 16s. Fairly girthy ear. The kernel length of this one is probably something like 20. Let's just count those out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. Let's just call that 32. We're not going to count the very tip, and I came up from that weirdness down here. I didn't count the weird kernels. So that's 32 and 14. This one here is a 16. Let's see what this one says. Count 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31. 32 again. Same thing, 32 again. So I got 32 and 32, but two less rows on this one. And this is a 14. 1, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 30, 31, 32. 32. So we're 32 on all three of these, even though this one here is a 14. This one here is a 14. The girth on this one is similar to the 16. You can tell by my fingers, right? They don't quite touch, and they don't quite touch. So this ear and this ear are very comparable to size. So the next thing to do is with these, if you're looking at corn, I'm not doing a yield projection. I can tell you right now that that corn is somewhere around 140 to 160 bushels at 32,000 plant population. I put in 32,700 or 500, 32,500 plant population. It would be 35.7 if I had gone that, but it's 32,500 plant population. So let's just say 32,000 plants per acre, you know, and then there's you do 17.5 feet or 17 feet 5 inches, and you count those stalks, so there would be 32 stalks in there, maybe 30. You could do 30 or 32. I'm still looking at, I am not doing the math. I guess I could in my head and then come back with stupid math, and it would be wrong anyway because it's not that accurate. It's accurate for that particular spot in the field, but you could get into a spot where there's no tip back or die back, and there's no, you know, sign of any problems. It could be that there's 42 kernels on 16 and 18 row ears. So that's why I'm not even going to bother. I've already done these things and for entertainment purposes, and really have come back with, you know, mediocre results. You know, they were close. It was like, you know, when you get 240 on your preliminary and then you come back at 190 overall average on the field, it's disappointing. So we don't even worry about that. But because we're here in New Jersey, 150 bushel to the acre is actually way above average. I think the average yield in New Jersey is 98 bushels or something. National average is 170, I think, or 172, something silly like that. So if I can be maybe just below the national average on this, that's great, because we just don't have the soils that you have out west. Now, I have been working at Regen Ag and making this better, and on Wednesday they're going to start flying on the cover crop for me. On 200 acres of soybeans, and then they're going to go somewhere else and fly on there for them, and then they're going to come back and finish up my 780 acres of land that I'm going to have cover cropped. Okay, so, and that's just the whole ball of wax there. 780 acres of cover crop is what they're going to be flying on. And that will be a big benefit to me. I've learned a lot in the last 3 years of doing regenerative agriculture. This is my 3rd year with it. And I have not been able to cut back really herbicide, but I have been able to reduce my fertilizer inputs. Now, let's talk about fertilizer inputs. This corn looks no different than corn that I've seen other farmers pull. Actually, this is actually a little better. Farmer MD, which he's in Maryland on the Eastern Shore, he doesn't have as nice a ear as this, believe it or not. And what I see Cole the Corn Star do is very similar to what we have here. But I think his population is higher, so I don't know what his population is. I just know what mine is, and it's about 32,000 plant population. Let's just say 500 plants per acre didn't make the cut. So the only way that you can increase your yield from this is if we continue to have rain on this, even though this is in full dent, all of it, full dent with the exception of a few ears or kernels, it is still building this kernel. Until it hits black layer, it is not finished. So it can be at full dent and it's getting starchy at the ends of the kernel. And let me crack that open for you. And you can see the depth of that kernel. So what I'm seeing here is the depth of that kernel is somewhere around 1/2 inch. We can measure it. I got a tape measure in the truck here. Hold your horses and I'll go get that. If it's 1/2 inch right now, it could literally become a 5/8 of an inch pretty easily, from 1/2 inch to 5/8. We just got 7/10 of an inch of rain here, and let's take a look here and see where we're at. We are actually, we are already at 5/8 of an inch. So that's a 5/8 of an inch. We are not at black layer yet. It's still milky. I'm going to squeeze this. You can see. See that? Did it shoot out? You can see the juiciness of that. This kernel is still taking nutrient into it, right? And this is the 14 row kernel ear. This is the 16 row. So let's snap that bad boy there. 16 rows. It's a narrower kernel from what the other one was, which makes it look longer. And let's see where we are on the length of this thing. We are at 5/8 as well. So you can tell, let me pull another kernel off of this one. This kernel and this kernel. You can clearly see the difference between the 14 and the 16 row ear of corn. So the narrower one is the 16 row, even though it's the same depth, kernel depth. This thing could literally get probably gain another a 16th or an eighth of an inch with the rainfall that we've had. Now I'm going to do this one. This is the 14, and it is a much smaller ear, or smaller ear and smaller kernel. This one here is definitely, let's see, that one is a solid ½ inch. Solid. It's slightly longer than ½ an inch. So this one's an eighth of an inch. You can see the difference. So let me get the tip of this one. This is a 14 row. 14 row. You can see the difference right there. So I'd rather take this over this. Now, the other thing that will gain you is test weight. If you look at this corn, it's actually getting a decent color to it right now. So as it dries down, the density of this corn, the nutritional density of this corn, 56 pounds is in a bushel of corn. A bushel is 8 gallons. So 8 gallons of corn, 1 bushel of corn, 56 pounds for corn. That same bushel of corn could test weight, I've seen as high as 63 pounds per bushel, which is a substantial increase in yield by no more volume. So that 23,000 bushel bin over there could probably store something like 26,000 bushels of a 62, 63 pound test corn. This ear is heavy. This half of an ear is heavier than this whole ear. Denser, quality, grain. We won't know until we get the combine into it, and that's coming probably 3 weeks from now. We could possibly get some corn off. I'm not anxious to get corn off, but if I'm not getting paid from my hay deliveries like on a regular schedule, I'm gonna have to bite the bullet and go ahead and combine some corn, or definitely soybeans. I got soybeans that the leaves are falling off of right now. They were that 2.7 maturity, average maturity from Newag. I wasn't happy with them. I don't know what they're going to yield. We'll know when I get the combine into it. And that's coming sooner rather than later, which means I'm going to have to go rent a step deck, or not a step deck, I'm going to have to go rent a hopper trailer so that I can haul those into the port where I have contracts on that. And that'll get me some money to pay bills and, that sort of thing. And the hay will just keep getting sold, and when they decide that they're going to get me on a regular schedule, that we will, be able to pay our bills more regularly. And that's what it all boils down to. Now, let's talk about nutrient and input costs on this corn. So if I was going to, I think I did the right thing this year. And I'm not the only one with this tip back. Like I said, it's all across the whole country. I was watching the Route 80, the Route I-80, whatever the hell they do, the I-80 crop tour. So I was watching some of that, and this was actually pretty good. There's no mold on this. There's no myco or aflatoxin or vomitoxin on this. There's no mold, which is a plus, because if you do get that mold, and it'll be in the tip, it'll be in these end kernels, and it can cause you an ass ache. So we don't want ass aches. We got to have nice clean corn, which you can take that particular type of corn, the vomitoxin kernels, out of it, but it costs like $25,000 for the machine to do it. So let's just hope and pray that we don't have any of that, and I don't think we do. So one way to increase your yield is with test weight, right? And test weight, and then of course the depth of the kernel. That's the whole thing right there. Test weight and kernel depth. So let's just hope and pray that these things continue to fill and elongate that kernel and put in the density of it. So my inputs on corn, and I've talked about this extensively over the course of the summer, whether you've listened to me or not, it's okay. but I would like to just elaborate a little bit here. So when I set out this spring to do this thing, I had cover crop on a lot of this stuff. There was volunteer cover crop, which i.e. grass and clovers that had come up. I didn't need to seed them in. There was plenty of organic residue on top of the ground as well, which would break down and put the P and K back into the soil as it was needed and as it broke down by Mother Nature, the biology in the soil. I planted 170 acres of field peas, and that helped as well. Those ears of corn are over in that other, in the gator over there. Those are about the same as this. There's really no difference in the consistency of our corn crop. It all looks about the same with the exception of the latest planted corn, and I think that is not going to have any tip back because it wasn't dry at all. Well, it went through a dry spell, but it was before pollination. So, and then it's rained on it every week since, so I'm pretty happy with the way that looks. So my input costs. What did I do to cut my input costs down? To proactively manage my input costs. Now, it was labor intensive, I'm not going to lie. I put down 175 units of nitrogen. I call it 170 just because it's easier to do the math that way. So 170, then I came back in. I came back in after it came up and we had yellow corn, if you remember that from my videos. The yellow corn, I am wholeheartedly and do believe 100% that it was a chemical carryover from last year, and this year's chemical combined and dry spell at that time. There wasn't enough moisture to actually get that herbicide into the soil until the corn had come up. And when it did that, that corn was thirsty, and it pulled a bunch of chemical up into it, causing it to turn yellow and purple and just really scare the ever-loving shit out of me because I've got 650 acres of this stuff. 650 acres of corn, I think I might be at 700 acres of corn because I killed 50 acres of soybeans and planted 50 acres of corn. So just say I have 700 acres of corn and 650 acres of soybeans. That's where we're at. We're about 1,300 acres there. So 1,350 acres. So what I did was when it turned yellow, I went and I pulled tissue samples off of this corn. In a panic, I did it. I did it in a day. I went to the worst parts of the fields to do this as well. I didn't go to the best part. I went to the worst part and I pulled tissue samples from the outskirts of the wet part, the worst part, and right down the center. So there was, I think, 10 leaves from each area in each field that I felt had the worst problem, okay? And that's what I did. The tissue analysis came back that it was for the most part, we were good. The plant was taking up nutrient like it was supposed to, except for two things. One was zinc, which wasn't bad. It was in the low end of the spectrum in the adequate band. And the other one was magnesium, which was at the low end. It was a little lower than the zinc and on the low end of the spectrum. And that was uptake of the plant. So we settled on the blend of fertilizer that I needed to do. Now, if I'd have went ahead and done the prescribed, everybody does this way of farming this year, it would have cost me approximately $300 an acre to put the remainder of my nitrogen and the potassium and phosphate, boron, zinc, and magnesium on that field. If I'd have done it the way everybody does it for eons or since modern fertilizers have been around. I used to do it that way, and it's expensive, and I did experiments as I go through my life on reducing nitrogen, phosphate, and potassium. You cannot get away from nitrogen. That right now at this point in my life, nitrogen, I cannot get away from it. But phosphate and potassium is in the soil. So the tissue analysis said that potassium, magnesium and sulfur were low. The zinc was okay. It was okay. So we came up with the K-Mag, which is potassium and magnesium, and I used ESN and ESN and AMS, ammonium sulfate and extremely stupid nitrogen, you know, that polycoated urea. I put that on there. We got a rain shower and that washed it in. And I also have checks. Checks are areas where I didn't put it on and I cannot tell the difference, which is kind of crazy, but I cannot, to the naked eye, tell the difference. I have a feeling I'm going to be able to tell the difference in the combine. But I should be able to see one 60-foot swath across one particular field on 2 different farms and see what it's a 50 acre swath, 50-foot swath, 50-foot swath, and yeah, on the farms that I put that on. This farm did not get K-Mag. These ears look no different than the ears I pulled off of the fields that got the K-Mag, which also leads me to believe that it is a chemical burn, not a deficiency in nutrients. So instead of it costing me that $300 per acre, it is just under $80 per acre to put on what the tissue samples told me I needed to have. And I did see an immediate response. Within a week, there was an immediate response. It definitely changed the look of the field. The fields, all the fields. I put it on all the corn except for this farm here. And there was an immediate response when we got that rain. I think rain had something to do with it as well. But all in all, we're going to end up with corn that looks like this over the whole 700 or 650, 700 acres of corn, 650, 700 acres of corn that we have. And yeah, now price-wise, I have contracts. When I made the contracts, I thought I was shooting myself in the foot. I don't have a lot contracted, but I contracted enough that I was nervous when we started to dry up. And I mean, I was a dog shitting razor blades, ladies and gentlemen. I was not happy at all about what was going on with the crop. So, but with that being said, all in all, we started getting rain. That hurricane that came through, we didn't get any of the hurricane's rain, but we did get 3.5 inches of rain on some of the farms, and we got, on most of the farms was 3.5 inches of rain. But there's one particular farm that got 8 inches. And in that 8 inches, there was another farm that got 4.5 inches of rain. So 4.5 inches of rain on the driest part and 8 inches on really good ground with really nice soybeans on it. Those beans could literally pull 100 plus bushels to the acre. I will not say that they are going to be 100 plus bushels, but the combine is going to tell me how many bushels per acre are there, because I refuse to do a yield assessment on soybeans anymore, because I can never get it right. You can count pods, you can count beans in pods, you can do all of the stuff that you're supposed to do to get an accurate reading that the USDA sanctions it. And every time I do it, I'm going to get 200 bushels of soybeans. Right? 200 bushels of soybeans. I'm not going to get 200 bushels of soybeans. I'd be lucky to get 70 bushels of beans on everything because of deer pressure and other things. But the corn, I'm pretty happy right now for what we've gone through. The soybeans, I got soybeans contracted for over $12, and I'm pretty pleased with that. I wish I had another 10,000 bushels of soybeans contracted, but there was a point in the middle of this summer, in the middle of July, the first couple of weeks of July, the early part of July, where I thought that I had over-contracted because the soybeans looked so horrific and they didn't look like they were going to produce anything unless we got rain. And thank the Lord, and a lot of praying, we got the rain that we needed. And the beans, I got beans I was in today that are up to my crotch that were planted on June 27th. I planted them that late, and they are still blooming, and they have 4 and 5 bean pods on them, whereas the earlier soybeans that are in this video, or in a video that I've done, they're only 2 and 3 bean pods and sometimes a fourth, but 4 and 5 bean, 3, 4, and 5 bean pods, that's where you make it up. Again, in test weight as well. So this video has gone on too long. You're probably bored out of your freaking mind, but this is it. To anybody out there that is interested in learning some of the things that I have done, there's a lot of information online and through my videos and other videos on how to reduce your input costs. I am going to be building a machine this coming winter where I will be able to probably be able to reduce my P and K inputs even further, where I have cover crops added, and I'm going to use a concentration. It's going to be something that I'm building. It is not going to, you see, you have to build it in order to save money. If you go out and you buy a, say, a strip till machine, I don't want to till the soil. That is the last thing I want to do, is till the soil, but I do want to band it. And I don't want to band it over the top of the soil. I want to get it in the ground about that deep. I don't want to disturb the soil too much, and I don't want to do it while I'm planting corn. I want to put it in up to a month before I plant the corn, so that it is in the ground, it is already dissolved, broke down, and spread out through that 1 foot strip where that corn is going to be planted between them. And that corn will have all the juice it needs to pop and go. Right out of the field, and then I will only need to add my nitrogen to it. So that's the plan for this coming year, and I hope you all stick with me on this one. And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and say "One Lonely Farmer's an idiot" in the comment section if you made it to the end. Have a nice day.